Right.
15 episodes, you have some traditions, I think, at that point.
Well, I mean, our traditions all started episode 1, basically.
I would say within the first 5 episodes, we started on some of our traditions.
Well, it's just
we've gotten so meta that we were talking about the podcast outside of the podcast, which is
live now.
For me a big no. We were actually with Kevin O'Malley, VC and Kevin O'Malley from
wow.
So okay, in our defense though, Kev, because I was thinking about that after it happened. In our defense, we did not bring it up. It was brought up to us, and we both cringed, which I feel is the appropriate response.
That is a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good defense. You defended it well.
Yes, I feel that was we responded appropriately, which is we were both uncomfortable with the fact that it was brought up, and then we answered questions, and then we diverted the conversation, which is, I think, the exact response that is appropriate. So
how'd you do it? Were you like, hey, how about this weather?
We're simultaneously
no. Actually, how we did it is Kevin was like, "This is really weird. Let's stop talking about it."
It was not smooth.
It wasn't smooth. He didn't even try. He was like, "Now it's weird. We're talking about our own podcast. Let's move on."
That's just how influential we are.
Shoot.
Oh, that's so cringe. Yeah, we are. We're super influencers, you guys. I've honestly, I'm not gonna reveal what I was just gonna say. I'm gonna wait till the moment actually comes.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let it be what it is.
Smart. That's a teaser. That's what we call a teaser.
There will be a day that, never mind, we'll be validated so authentically, and I'm waiting for the right moment. The moment hasn't come, but it's approaching. I feel it. Okay, Tim, do you want to pray?
Yes. So shameless plug for this app called iPieta that shout out to Tom Leah introduced me to. Oh no, the prayer just went away. Hold on, I gotta find it again. Okay, found it. iPieta. It has a bunch of books, a bunch of like cool prayers and novenas, just all right there at your fingertips. It's awesome. So this is a prayer by St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. No, that says St. Francis de Sales. Oh my gosh. Oh man, I lost the prayer. Oh no.
That's okay.
There are literally so many on here. I'm just like, I don't.
We've got 2 hours. It's fine.
That's true. Salutation to the Sacred, prayer to the Sacred Heart. Okay, found it. So this is a prayer by St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, prayer to the Sacred Heart. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Lord Jesus, let my heart never rest until it finds you, who are its center, its love, and its happiness. By the wound in your heart, pardon the sins that we have committed, whether out of malice or out of evil desires. Place my weak heart in your own divine heart, continually under your protection and guidance, so that I may persevere in doing good and in fleeing evil until my last breath. Amen.
Right.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Woo!
Thanks, Tim. That was great.
Woo! Let's go.
I'm going to do a couple of like quick plugs. First, we have a website that has been used officially because someone sent us like a really awesome question on it, which I just sent you guys a little bit ago. So our website has now been legitimized. If you didn't know we have a website, you can watch all of our live streams on the website, and you can also listen to the podcast on the website if you're not into actually watching us on video, which is cool. So our website is chicagoinquisition.com. You can also contact us on the website. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, you guys, leave us reviews on iTunes and Spotify. That's great. Really great when you do
it. Yeah, wait.
Go leave us reviews. It's really awesome when we have reviews. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say.
Now we're really a podcast. When we start asking to review on we're here. We're fully bought in, and
there is nothing that I enjoy more than seeing that we have a new review. Actually, I haven't checked it in a while, so wait, I'm going to look right now and see if we have any new reviews.
If it's good, we'll read it live.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's good, we'll read it live.
I'm down with that.
If you're watching right now and you wrote the question, if we don't read your question, it means it was a bad question. So
Hey.
The question is,
basically what we're
There
saying.
are no bad questions.
That's not.
Basically what we're saying.
All right, we don't have any new reviews. So you guys, we need reviews. If you leave a really good review, we'll read it. Maybe we should come up with like a new award. like
Well, because
every week we have
nobody
like the
wanted
Kevin
us
O.
to give them a shout out because that was the original incentive was that we would give them a
Yeah, I'm
shout
so
out, and
annoyed that
nobody
didn't-
wanted that, so they didn't leave
Oh.
reviews.
I know that's their loss. So, I mean, here's the thing, like the other, well, I'm not going to float ideas while we're live. I'll float ideas while we're not live. Anyway, so we have a friend with us today, Jon Haines, who is the roommate of Zach and Marty. Every time I say Zach and Marty, I feel like I'm talking about Rick and Morty or something. Anyway, so Jon, do you want to give like a quick intro to yourself? Like, you're back in Chicago after being gone for a little while. Where are you from? You know, what do you do? I know you're like studying right now. So do you want to like give a quick intro to yourself and then we'll launch into the topic? Awesome.
Yep, sure. So, I'm from Ohio originally. I went to Steubenville for undergrad. Was in Chicago here working for the Sarah Clubs, if you've heard of them. And as Mary Kate mentioned, I moved down to Texas. And so now I am like a fifth year philosophy. Oh my gosh, fifth year PhD student. And so, working towards the end of the dissertation and came back to Chicago because I like the place.
Nice.
Thanks for having me on, and I'll try to make Zach proud. So.
Nice. Can you do you want to mention briefly, like, what are you actually studying? Like, what's your
So like the first 4 years of it are pretty general, like different topics, but I'm focusing in on actually technology, like how Aquinas would see technology playing a part in life and especially in the political sphere. So there's this guy named Yves Simon that taught at University of Chicago and Notre Dame that wrote about that. So
awesome. Nice, which is like very relevant to our topic because we're talking about cancel culture. So that's pretty awesome.
And we happen to have 3 masters of philosophy on this podcast. So
Wow.
Oh, I guess you guys actually are
Be
masters of
impressed.
philosophy.
It's not
I thought you
John
were just
Trainer.
like
It's not John Trainer.
It's only an academic designation. It does not necessarily mean we're competent.
Hey, speak for yourself, man.
yeah, no kidding.
Tim's like, what are you talking about? I'm perfectly competent in talking about philosophy. That's actually 100% true. Tim is the most competent of anyone I know. So
If you say it, I'll believe it.
That is first hot take of the night.
Tim, is that the first time anyone's ever roasted Tim on this? No, that's not true. We roast Tim about Sparkosoft all the time.
That's true. Yeah.
Wow. All right, cool. So does anybody want to give a quick,
I'm going out fire.
for those of us who might not know what cancel culture
Thanks, Mary Kate. Okay, I have a confession to make.
I wasn't actually referring to you, Dan.
I have
wasn't.
a confession to make. So I did not know what cancel culture was. So I thought cancel culture was the
Don't.
What?
Say it.
No.
Say it now.
So I thought it was like this whole thing about it's like
Don't even.
right now in coronavirus we have 2 sides and one of them wants to open everything up and one of them wants to cancel basically everything. And so I just thought that the cancel culture was this culture of we're just going to cancel everything because of coronavirus. That I thought that was what it was. Mary Kate somehow came up with coronavirus in a petri dish, a cancel culture, which I thought was very clever. That's like my kind of joke right there. So I love that. But anyway, so I have a lot to learn about this topic tonight, and I'm very excited to be a guest on my own podcast to learn about it tonight.
Yes, this is the Dan Karenchin podcast, where Dan is also a guest. It's where we teach Dan about things he doesn't know about.
I've been forced to be on this podcast for the past few
That
weeks.
would actually be a fascinating side hustle is to we teach Dan about things about the world. We teach Dan about the world, all the different things.
There's a lot he doesn't know.
Let me ask him. Yeah, he'd be cool with that.
Oh my gosh.
This is my last episode for a while, so I'm going out guns blazing here.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, he even got dressed up for the event. He wore a button-down shirt as opposed to his usual t-shirt tuxedo.
T-shirt tuxedo.
Tuxedo.
He wore
All
that
right.
he wore it to mass yesterday, so we needed to change it up.
You did.
I was wearing a cassock over it, so it's fine.
So nobody knows.
No one knows.
Oh geez. Okay. Anyway, does someone want to give? So since Dan here needs a quick lesson on what cancel culture actually is, does anyone want to give like a quick 2-second blurb?
I can try, and Mary
All right.
Kate and others can mop up whatever this disaster is about to be. So from what I understand, cancel culture kind of started on Twitter, at least on the internet somewhere. Of if you don't like something, if someone says something wrong or against, not necessarily wrong, but against like the society, the current culture, the milieu. I have to use a philosophy term for you. If you go against it, you cancel them by just saying like everything they've ever done is bad, and they're not allowed to participate in anything ever again. And you basically drag them through the mud. You oftentimes you go up and you dig up their past posts, and you say like, oh man, this guy has always, or girl has always thought this, and like just destroy them. I think one of the one that I can think of right now that was like very obvious was, I think Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Oscars, and he said something, was it racist or against gay? I can't even remember what it was, but
it was homophobic. But yeah.
Homophobic. There it was.
Yeah.
And so
Was it actually homophobic though?
I don't
Did he
remember.
actually
I don't
say-
even remember. I couldn't even tell you what the thing he said
Okay.
was.
No
but
idea.
it got put out there, and a week later, maybe not even a week later, after he was announced he was going to be hosting the Oscars, the Academy Awards pulled him. And I'm pretty sure that they have not had an official host since then. Like there's not, they've been doing this like group hosting thing, which is a disaster. Not that the Oscars really matters.
Most
at
things
all.
in Hollywood are a disaster.
So it's now spilled. It's kind of spilled outside of Twitter and the internet into when people say something you don't like or is against society, against the popular society, the popular culture, you just get rid of them and you ignore them, and then they're never forgiven, and they're basically done forever. I mean, I think we're seeing it now with all the statues that are being removed, and it's a slightly different question, but I mean, I think it's
in the same vein.
It's in the same vein. Anyone who's saying anything like, if you say the wrong thing, you can be completely destroyed. I mean, honestly, like Dr. Anthony Fauci wore he was caught not wearing a mask at a baseball game, and like I'm sure he's at risk of getting canceled because he's a hypocrite. And like I'm like at this point, like why anyone would ever be famous for anything, except for being Howie's owner. I mean, that's pretty sweet gig, but
Am I famous for that?
I don't know. I just had to tie Howie into that. Like, if you were wondering what the barking is like, just making sure I'm like, it's not man. It's actually a real life dog.
Someone canceled.
So did I encapsulate it right?
Yeah, I mean, I
think
think yeah, that's a good starting point.
And a big point with the Kevin Hart story is that they drudged up stuff from as far back as like 2009. Twitter posts, stand-up comedy, little comments here and there. One of his, I'm secretly reading a little bit about Kevin Hart's history of getting canceled from the Academy Awards. And so one of the things was he's doing a little stand-up, and where he said that he made some joke about preventing his son, doing things to prevent his son from becoming gay. And people just got caught into a very niche kind of section of the American public sphere, and it carried on, and people remembered it until it became part of the Academy Awards. He had also done some writing for the movie Get Hard, and of course prison jokes, gay jokes, that kind of didn't take too well. And then all the stuff, people getting drudged up from the past, kind of culminated, and people said, no.
Yeah, to the point where if I ever became, God forbid, I ever became famous, it's not going to happen. Don't worry. But I would immediately delete my Twitter and make a new one. It would be gone, and so that no one could ever take anything. And not that I don't think I've said anything offensive, but I'm sure out of context. Like it's to the point where like you can't, like everything is brought up and taken completely out of context and looked at in our modern lens, in a now 2020 lens or whatever year it is. It's you looking at that lens, whereas, you know, I'm sure
Which is obviously the best argument for everything.
Oh yeah,
it is current year. How can we still?
Yeah,
I digress.
This is one of my biggest fears. Is like, so my Twitter. I got Twitter in 2009. So there's like stuff on my Twitter. Like me and my friends when we were, what year? I graduated from high school in 2010. So when we were juniors in high school, we would just like, you know how you like did Facebook walls? Like it was like texting back and forth. Like you just like message each other on there. Like my friends and I did Twitter like that when I was a junior in high school. I couldn't tell you. And there's been numerous times I've tried to go back and look at this stuff and like sift through it. I can't get that far back. Like it's hard. It's not easy to just like go back. And I was a freaking junior in high school. I don't know what I was saying on the internet at that time. I mean, it was also like this kind of stuff didn't exist. People didn't like worry about this. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, it's like a very real thing. So why is like cancel culture? Why is this like even a thing? Like why is it so prominent, and why is it like, why does it feel like every time, I mean, you'll see it legitimately happen to people like Kevin Hart, for example, that it's actually effective. And then you'll see people getting called out that they're like trying to make stuff a thing. Like it's something like people actively try to go after people for stuff that they've posted on social media before. Why is this a thing? Why do people do this, that they try to point to something someone said in the past and say like, you know, look at this, see as though it proves something about this person?
I have two reasons why I think it happens. One, it's easy. Cancel culture right now, if I don't have to debate someone or bring up any sort of thing on the opposite side or engage with them in any sort of conversation, I can just cancel them and then I don't have to worry about it at all. And they're now out of my life, out of the purview and out of the cultural thing, and they're gone. And I don't have to worry about them anymore. So it's just an easy thing to do. It requires zero effort on my part. And then I think number two is that deflects. I think that the term is virtue signaling. It's the we're doing a lot of definitions right now, and
I know, I really like it. Can you define virtue signaling, please?
Well, it's the idea of like you say you make sure you post as much as you can about how something is wrong, and you make sure that everyone knows that, like, I would never dare do this thing. I would never dare call someone gay. I'd never be homophobic. I would never dare be racist. Like I have black friends. Like that's like the original, virtue signaling. Like
praise God, I am not like this beggar.
Oh, actually, there's the original one. I mean, that's
so
well done, John. I mean, that's
Good job, John.
I would say that's the two reasons that I think.
Biblical.
Yeah.
All right, I'm out.
You can't improve from that.
Yeah.
I thought the original one was, this woman you put in the garden here with me made me.
The original virtue signal.
Pretty sure that's the original
Holy
one.
mackerel. Wow.
Holy mackerel counter number one.
All right.
So,
I can see why it's so easy with the internet too, because you can just dig up stuff. If people are willing to post stuff all over the place, then you can just dig it up easily.
And I wonder too.
Go, Tim.
I wonder too if there's something about like the culture surrounding like dialogue, conversation, and debate. And I have like two examples from college where like I was like micro canceled, like in a conversation. So like I don't have a better term for it, micro canceled. But I'm sure you guys have probably seen this online where somebody's trying to make an argument and then another person says, well, it's not my job to teach you. Like somebody's on two separate occasions, somebody like said that to me twice. And then another one is just like, your ignorance is like not my problem kind of thing. And I remember like, I'm actually trying to like kind of like understand their position. We're having a debate, and rather than kind of engage me, they just like shut me out altogether. And like, you know what? You're not even worth it. It's not my job to teach you. And like, well, then what are you doing? So I think it starts from the change in the culture of debate to where we don't know how to like disagree with each other anymore. And to where we kind of like morph into this ideological puritanism where it's like, if you're not in my clan, then F you, you ought to be burned at the stake. Like, whoa, when did this all like happen? It's all happening so suddenly. But.
Yeah, I don't know what makes it so much the other, right? Like in any sort of conversation, you can't have that disagreement. And we've talked about this before about a number of different topics, and I don't know if we can ever come up with a concrete reason why everyone has become so much more divisive and unwilling to actually have conversation with each other. But I think that plays into it a lot, just in that it used to be that was seen as like, that wasn't a good tactic to just you had to try and understand your opponent's point of view. You had to be willing to instruct other people. But now it's accepted, and I don't really know why that changed.
Well, you had to be willing to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Anytime you enter an honest dialogue with someone, you have to come out at least seeing their side, or potentially change your mind yourself. And no one's willing. People hold their beliefs at such a core identity. He'll have such a massive idea of identity that if you prove something wrong, or if I lose this one deep thing that I hold, well then like, who am I? And so people lose their completely lose their sense of self. And so I think that's one thing is why they, like you said, John, you don't want to even enter into it. It's like, what if the worst happens and I'm wrong about something? I mean, I'm never wrong about anything. So neither is John. I'm sorry.
I can second that. Kevin is never wrong.
I'm so wrong. I'm so
John,
wrong almost all the time.
Were you saying something before?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. My mic was muted.
No worries. It's all good.
But I was just going to say, this is kind of going back a little bit, but I was going to say that when I first heard the term, I thought of kind of like maybe it was an extension from, and this is kind of like what Dan was maybe just me projecting my own thoughts on the definition, but I thought like maybe because we have all these subscriptions today to different things, and it's just easy to turn them off, right? Or to cancel them. So it's like kind of cutting off the conversation. It's kind of how I thought of the definition. Maybe that's a little less aggressive than like actively trying to tear down their character or something. But at minimum, that's kind of how I thought of it. But
that's interesting, because we kind of use the same phrase to mean different things, in the sense of like, we cancel people, but also like, I've talked about this a lot before. Like, I talk about this on Instagram a lot, that like Netflix has some horrible stuff. And there's like this whole, it's like the boycott culture, right? Of like, when a company or something does something that we don't like, or they show that they're supporting Trump or something. Everybody's like, boycott X, Y, or Z, and both sides do it. Is that what you mean when you say like subscriptions?
Yeah,
like specific
kind
things,
of like, there's so much noise coming, so many different opinions coming at us that an easier way, like Kevin was saying, is just I don't even have time to deal with this person, have this conversation, right? Like, and I think at bottom too, there's almost like an unspoken assumption a lot of times that conversation, or that words are always like an expression of power. Basically, people are just using the truth to try to club people, using words to get ahead, right? And nobody really, well, it's rarer in our culture to actually believe that words actually refer to, that people aren't just manipulating with their words, that kind of thing. So.
It really stinks that the nature of argument nowadays has gotten so personal. Bishop Barron lamented a few years ago after there was a I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but there was a legal decision that was made in the United States, and he was like, well, because of this, all we see the accusations now of those who disagree, they're all being labeled bigots, and they're all being labeled all these titles that are trying to attack them on a personal nature. And so we can't have an honest debate, and we can't actually like have a discussion if all we're doing is just attacking people. Like, it's kind of like Nietzsche's approach in philosophy was one of like, we're not really trying to like come together to solve problems. Like, what we're ultimately trying to do is like the balance of power all comes from who is able to assert themselves over everyone else. So it's just this fight of power back and forth. It's not about let's find a solution. Let's get the answer to this question. It's all about whoever comes out on top is the one who has the power. And so I feel like that's kind of like we see in the culture nowadays, of just everybody's just trying to like just get on top. Like, forget about the argument, man. We're not going to talk about it. It's just, let's just get into office and crush the other side and put, laws or Supreme Court justices or whatever it is, so we can get the other side to shut up. It's not about actually like debating the issues, which really stinks. One last quick thing. So I was talking with a priest today who is a professor of medieval philosophy at U of C, and he was saying that back in the day, the Epicurean philosophers, you were the best Epicurean philosopher if you could recite Epicureanism off the top of your head. Just like you could just like crank out the philosophy as well as you could. But in Aristotle's school in the Lyceum, the best student was the student who would go up to Aristotle and challenge him on what he believed. And that's ultimately like what we should be. And like Socrates was the same way. Like, okay, fine, try to find, well, how is this wrong? How is this wrong? Because then we can actually have a productive discussion. And people weren't afraid of that because it wasn't like personal attacks and all that. So
Dan is both the gadfly and the midwife of TCI.
Nice. Oh, thank you.
What?
Don't worry about it. It's a
philosophy joke.
It was a philosophy joke.
Don't worry about it, Mary Kate. It's a
Don't worry about it,
philosophy
Mary
joke.
John doesn't get it either. So.
Get it either.
Us masters of philosophy get the joke. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So I kind of have a question along those lines, because I do think I completely agree. And like, we'll get into that a little bit in terms of like what's a healthy way to debate truth and how are we pursuing truth versus not. And one of the things that immediately comes to mind with regards to the cancel culture. So both sides do this, right? Like both sides will like go after the other side on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. Trump himself does it. People do it about Trump. Like this is like a universal move essentially. So the one example that comes to mind that's recent is Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's wife. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
She's a model.
She's a legend, yeah.
Oh, nice job, Dan.
Stop.
Bravo.
Check yourself, Dan.
Terrible.
She tweeted, so people were going back through her tweets last week or the week prior. She has some pretty questionable tweets about like children specifically. Like there are tweets that people have pulled from her account that they're pointing to and saying like, this is sympathetic to pedophilia. And it's stuff that kind of makes your stomach turn, that she like was talking about. She was watching like one of that old dance show from years ago of like the young girls.
Where like Honey Boo Boo came from, like the dance.
Yeah, I don't recall. Yeah, it might have been a Dance Mom show. I don't remember the name of it, but she was like watching that show and like live tweeting it and saying some nasty stuff about the girls that were in it, that she was like turned on by them and things that are just straight up gross. And so for us, obviously, I think the six of us, I can safely say, would be pretty upset and uncomfortable with tweets like that, with something like that. And I think that that's like language that we would challenge. But the other side would say that the same is true about like Kevin Hart saying that he has a problem with his son being gay. So the question sort of becomes like, how do you respond to something that you feel so vehemently is false and wrong in a way that isn't entertaining this cancel culture? Because Dan, to your point, like we're supposed to be entertaining a conversation about this stuff. Like, I don't know, does that make sense what I'm asking?
So when you say false or wrong, do you mean like factually wrong, or do you mean like morally, like you should not be doing something like that?
Morally, like you
morally
should not, like you should not tweet about children being like sexually arousing.
Yeah. Okay.
Stuff like that, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we kind of talked about it in that you address the issue at hand, right? So it's not digging through previous tweets to then try to discredit like what someone is doing now. You address it like when it happens and in regard to like that specific issue. Like, I don't know. I think it can be brought up as being too broad of a thing. Like, because I don't agree with this person's stance on, nuclear energy or whatever, I'm now not going to listen to them in. It's a good analogy, Dan.
That's a great example.
But
I feel really strongly about nuclear
It
energy.
is a good example.
But these
Keep going,
very,
keep going.
very diametrically, like, not even related to each other, but because there's one thing that I disagree with, I'm not going to listen to somebody on anything that they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the issue. Like, you address the topic at hand, and if it's a morally reprehensible thing that someone's saying, you address it, and you address it more precisely than I mean, individually, like, you're free to just completely ignore Chrissy Teigen after something like that. Like, if you think that that's someone, but it's canceling is a different matter entirely.
Is it so within that vein, being personally free to ignore someone? Can you maybe talk more a little about that, or does someone want to talk a little bit about in terms of like? I think there's something valid to be said for the fact that, like, if someone says something that you're like, that is morally horrifying.
Yeah.
I would personally argue, and I've thought this about Chrissy Teigen for a long time. That's like, none of this was shocking to me when this, when this was said last week. I would argue that not only can you personally choose to ignore that person, I would argue that as Catholics, I think we have a little bit of an obligation to say, like, I'm not going to fill my brain with this nonsense, like fill my feeds with this person's opinions when I know that they have these very offensive, and I think that we are free. Not only are we free to do that, I think that there's an argument to be made that we should do that. And how do we reconcile that, if that's true, if what I'm saying is true? How do we reconcile that with the cancel culture?
I think what you're talking about is curtailing your feed, right? So you see Chrissy Teigen post something ridiculous, and you're saying, like, I don't want to have that nonsense in my feed anymore. I need to, like, so that's like one thing. But like, cancel culture takes it to a whole other thing where we say, no. Not only do I not want to, I don't think John or Dan or John or Kevin or Mary Kate should see this person anymore either. And so I think that would be like the difference is it's like cancel culture imposes something, as opposed to curtailing. But I think maybe John, you mentioned it before about like subscriptions, but how that kind of like adds to, that's like the proto level of cancel culture though. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, maybe, yeah.
I mean, I 100% agree with you, because I've got on Twitter, I've probably personally have.
You agree 100% with me or with Tim?
Okay, to piggyback on what Tim just said.
Dan, you're muted.
to defend myself, or to like, I guess put a personal thing out there, a personal example out there. I probably have close to 1,000 people blocked on Twitter.
Is anyone here surprised by that?
Not.
I mean,
spit.
And it's
I'm kind of surprised.
And I wonder, like, I every time, like, I've wondered, am I participating in cancel culture? Because I very much curate my timeline. Mostly it's because most of the people I have blocked are either like uber rad trads. I mean, like, state of a conscious rad trads, or like way far on the left, or ordained women, abortion is okay type, contraceptives out of existence sort of Catholics. I mean, and then it's some crazy stuff out there. Basically, St. Louis Cardinals fans, automatic block.
Of course.
St. Louis Cardinals.
I wonder
Kevin wants to cancel all the St. Louis Cardinals.
You cancel the St. Louis Cardinals?
Oh man, Yadier Molina is so canceled. But I wonder, like, I think about that. Like, is me curating my timeline so that I don't see anything that makes me angry.
Or unfriend Facebook who like post stuff you don't like, kind of that, like that.
I mean, right? I've done it where I just like, I don't really go on Facebook and like read through the feed very much. Maybe I'll look, I feel like, parents, I go on to look at pictures. But I do wonder, like, am I, like, I have a personal, like there's a site, a website. It's not an inappropriate website. Well,
church.
that I have a personal thing with a friend that he's not allowed to look at a certain Twitter account, and I'm not allowed to look at this purportedly Catholic website because it makes us angry when we look at each one. So we have a mutual agreement that if we ever do it, we have to tell each other, and then I don't know, punch each other. I don't really know what we do if we actually do it. And I mean, I think everyone on everyone would probably know who this guy is. I won't name drop him or anything like that. But I wonder if like,
is it John Trainer?
No, John. No. But I wonder, like, am I like missing out? Like, I effectively canceled this site out of my life. Now, anyone else can read this. I wish people didn't read it. Like, I wish people didn't read it, but I'm not going to cancel them. But like, is me doing this? I mean, I was thinking about this today, thinking about our episode. Like, I mean, we are called the Chicago Inquisition. I mean, the Inquisition, like, is that cancel culture? Like, we canceled a lot of people. The church kind of canceled people, like said, like, hey, you can't, like, this you believing this is bad for society. You can't believe this anymore. You need to believe this. Was the Inquisition, was that cancel culture? I mean, I legitimately thought that today. I'm like, well, maybe that was the.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. I don't know.
Because that's what it was. It was like, Christianity was so core to society that believing in heretical things was bad for the person and also bad for society. And so you need to. It was more. It was a little less because it wasn't like you're canceled. Like very few people were actually killed in the Inquisition. It was more of like, change. You got to change your mind. You need to change. And so maybe that's the difference between the Inquisition and cancel culture. Is cancel culture just says you're done, you're gone. There's no chance of repentance, forgiveness, anything. You're just gone. Maybe that's the key difference.
Well, I think because
I want to get there at some point.
My understanding of cancel culture, and you guys feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong, as I'm sure you will. I think cancel culture even goes a little bit further than just silencing people. I think it attempts to silence people and their opinion, but I think in addition to that, it also attempts to like rob them of their livelihood. Like, how many people who've been canceled have also like lost their jobs, lost their privacy, lost their good name.
Yep.
And I think that as Catholics, there's like something seriously here for us to contemplate, because there are people who are unjustly canceled. Like, they say things that are true and they get canceled. They get like, their lives are destroyed by it. And I would argue that there's like a modern day martyrdom happening there, that like people's lives are being destroyed because they said things that were true.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, sometimes guys, people get canceled because they said. I mean, it's maybe a little more rare, but like there's certain things. I don't know. I can't think of an example right now of someone who's maybe. I mean, it kind of spills over into like, for example, R. Kelly, awful person, did awful things. Yeah. I mean, Remix to Ignition still freaking bangs, you guys. And every time I listen to that song, am I supporting him? Am I participating in like what he did? Or like it's I mean, like you watch Trapped in the Closet and it's hilarious. Just all 59 hours of it. Oh, it's He did I'm pretty sure I watched him and Dan at the House of Discernment.
Yes, you did.
Okay, we're gonna have a watch party. No, we're canceling R. Kelly.
Oh, you guys we canceled R. Kelly. You guys have a whole list of things you want me to watch that I.
It's like a rap opera, I guess. What do you call it?
It's like a rap drama of sorts.
Yeah, and it plays out, and it's just it just keeps escalating, and it's just very funny. I think it's not supposed to be funny. It's kind of like The Room. If you know what The Room is.
Oh, it's supposed to be funny.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Wow.
That's totally serious.
Are you? Wait, what? Really?
Yeah.
It's
like The Room.
Oh, well, The Room. I feel like The Room is completely different.
John.
But anyway,
did you have something you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say
something that's relevant to the conversation.
I think maybe an important approach or an approach to solving this might be just like observing how technology's caused a lot of these issues, and that you can maybe take the more human-sized approach. And what I mean by that is like what we were saying earlier about having conversations with people. I think that's like fundamentally what's going on the internet is conversation, but it's more confusing now because there's multiple people that can comment at any time and tons of, you can talk to tons of people at the same time. And so it's like not quite clear who's talking to who, and people just give up, I think, because they're overwhelmed with that. And so they just, like I said, just cancel them. Like, okay, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But really, like, so I'm not sure I have like a super practical solution to that, but just like talking to one person at a time if you think it's worth it. And like, I think it's legitimate to like block people on Twitter if they're not like having a conversation,
Yeah.
It's but I think fundamentally, like what Dan was saying about Socrates and Aristotle, like that's the important thing is like the conversation is what allows us to get to the truth, and that's the most valuable thing to us, Well,
and yeah, I mean, because Twitter's the worst example of that, right? Where someone like quote tweets a bad take, and then everybody just starts dunking on them, and it's doesn't facilitate that, like you're saying, that one-on-one conversation, that ability to actually sit down and talk to somebody that disagrees with you and find out what's going on there. So yeah,
at the same time, it's kind of awkward because like who does have the time to like address every comment, So it's understandable.
Totally.
That you get so frustrated, but I
Which
think
is
that's the only way to legitimately do it.
Totally.
Yeah, which is why conversation online is it's so hard to do, right? Like the public comment or comment sections, right? Like great places to go and read stuff. No, they're not. But like, we're all searching for truth together. And I think there's a reason that God made it so that we would have to be with each other and consult each other as like we all are on this mutual path towards truth. And so when this whole cancel culture thing is just seems like some kind of assertion of, well, I can do this on my own, or I know what's right and I don't need anyone, especially if you disagree with me, to help me see maybe the flaws in what I believe. And so it's very isolating, right? And like God does not want us to isolate ourselves in some kind of echo chamber, even if it's hard to hear that you're wrong. But I guess that's the point.
Yeah, and even an echo chamber, because I think that's what I do worry I've created for myself on Twitter. I try to get things from both sides, but if it's usually the extremes is where I'm like gone.
Except but like St. Louis Cardinals.
They're just bad. They're bad and they deserve to be blocked.
Cancel the Cardinals. Hashtag cancel the Cardinals.
Oh, man, absolutely. So there's actually two levels to that joke there if you expand it to the church. But wow, no one? Okay.
Did you just make a hierarchy joke?
I did. I'm like, wow, that absolutely dropped dead.
I mean, it shocked me. My eyes got as big as the screen, but
that's what the Cardinals, golly. Okay.
That's
how I justified
Tim.
Hi, Kevin.
How I justify blocking people on Twitter is kind of what Dan just said, is that it's so, it is so hard to change someone's mind online, in person, much less online. And so it's like, you know what, I'm going to use Twitter as a way to laugh, to have fun. There's some fun jokes that are posted there. There's some legitimately cool thoughts by a lot of like the Twitter priests and sisters and some of the lay folk that are on there. Like there's some good dialogue, and like that's what I want to see when I go on Twitter. Not all like the super hot takes that are super toxic that only make me, that only really serve. It's sort of, you can never tell if they're actually trolling or not, but it just makes me angry. And I used to follow people on Twitter just so I could get angry. Like I used to that, especially with sports. Like there were some
hate follow people.
I would hate follow. I used to hate follow.
Pretty much my entire existence when I was like religiously on Twitter was like hate following people.
Yeah, and so I realized I was doing it. I'm like, you know what, this is bad. I'm not. So I unfollowed all those accounts. I may have even blocked some of them to make sure they didn't show up. Because you tried it. You tried it. It's the like John said, when people quote tweet and like they bring all this stuff in your time. I'm like, I don't want to see that, man. Come on.
So
I think it's a great point.
Yeah, within that context, Kev, I think there's like a differentiation to be made between like applying boundaries to ourselves when we know that like my like exposure to this particular mindset or perspective or even like this particular publication like only makes me angry. Like, I think there's a difference between that and saying like, this viewpoint, well, I guess the question is, how do you like differentiate between the two? Because there's obviously a difference between like trying to control myself and trying to protect myself from the truth, which is inherently convicting and painful when I hear it.
Yeah, I think
So,
Tim
like,
gave like a good definition of like the difference between cancel culture and an echo chamber and blocking on Twitter. It's like, is it me? I'm just saying like, I don't want this. And every time you should be, examining like, why am I actually doing this? Is it because it's making me uncomfortable, or because it's making me angry? And and the uncomfortable is like, okay, I mean, you should look into that. Angry, why is it making me angry? So you should really, I mean, you should be looked at.
Okay, but perhaps that's the more important question is like, why does this make me feel the way it makes me feel?
Right.
Like, why am I angry when I look at this? Am I angry because it's challenging my worldview, which could be good if my worldview is wrong? Or does it make me angry because it's inherently evil? Like,
What's the other thing? Like, people get a thrill out of, people enjoy feeling these certain emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like anger, like Gus.
Well, and it's more superiority a lot of times too with the stuff that makes me angry. Like, I can read certain publications and see that they are against church teaching, and then I feel better because they're against church teaching, and in this particular instance, at least I'm not. So I think a lot of it's that too. It's a way to feel better about ourselves.
And I think it adds to the temptation to look at the conversation as just a power struggle. So it affirms that assumption that a lot of people have, that truth is just a club that you beat people with, or words are just a thing that you just, like you were saying, Nietzsche says like the truth is just like a way of asserting power on other people. And it's like, when people are having those fights on Facebook, like a lot of times they care more about winning than actually getting to the bottom of it,
Yeah. And I think that's like that's kind of one of the other questions here is like, are we, when we're engaging in like a cancel culture mentality, are we discerning truth well? Or rather, like, how do we discern truth well in the midst of this culture that tells us that we should just eliminate the voices that don't reaffirm our worldview?
How do we eliminate them? Is that what you said?
I guess I'm maybe it's rhetorical, but I guess I'm just asking them. I guess I'm just asking this question of like, how do we discern truth in a practical sense in this world that tells us like, if you eliminate, I don't know. It's hard because I guess like, I'm just kind of repeating the same question I asked before, that like, I think it's hard. It's hard to like know, practically speaking, how to eliminate voices that are not reliable voices, while at the same time like being open to the potential that like my worldview isn't always 100% accurate all of the time.
So I think you have to like presume charitably that people aren't just being inflammatory and aren't just saying things for the sake of riling up others. So if you start from that mindset and so you see something that challenges your worldview, you engage with it, you like, again, if you have the time, like whatever, I don't know, this is all, but you see something that challenges your worldview, you engage with it, you have to really charitably like enter into a dialogue with this one person and try and find out where they're coming from, where you're coming from, have that conversation. If you then, I mean, we're adults here and we can kind of feel for if someone's just arguing for the sake of arguing, or if they're actually seeking the truth themselves. And if you come to the realization that, wow, this person actually just doesn't really care about, they just want to make me mad, they just want to like yell at somebody, well, then at that point, yeah. But I think it just takes time and not being so reactionary, I guess.
I agree with John, and that's such a hard first step for people to make, is just to not presume that person, right, is just trying to rile people up, is going to use a bunch of inflammatory language, yeah, it's just hard enough to do that because it just almost seems like we're conditioned to do that because we see other people do that and we do it ourselves. So yeah, I think it's a great point, John.
So with you guys are talking specifically about like interacting with people that we like maybe personally know or like an individual on social media.
Not even that.
Yeah.
Well,
You're about to ask, like, well, how do you know at all anything about them?
Well, right. Like that's my thing is like, there are like talking heads on the media that like, I know because I've heard them talk that I'm like, this person's account of what's happening or their report of what's happening is not reliable.
Sure. So you've used that experience, like you know them, you've seen what they've said time and time again. So then now you're able to make that that conclusion after thinking about it, like having that experience. It's the initial encounter that you have with somebody, whether it's watching a clip of them online, whether it's actually interacting on Twitter or in person. The initial encounter, you have to, I mean, and I'm just as guilty of not doing this, but you have to presume charity from both parties. And
but you don't necessarily have to engage them, right? Like, because every comment, you can presume the truth of them, but like it would be so much time to go and deal with every single one.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe we can just walk with the people who are just right in front of us, right? I mean, the people that we actually interact with in person on a day-to-day basis. And they could be like friends and family, people we actually have relationships with that we can actually talk about these things with, right? Because it's hard to have even a deep conversation about something we disagree with if I don't even know who you are, right? So.
Well, yeah, and I would even take that a step further that like, you know, there's this, we hear about like, you know, we hear jokes on social media about like, the Thanksgiving dinner table with our like conservative uncle or whatever, right? That like there are particular extended family or conservative cousin or whatever. I don't know, aunt, whatever.
Or
that it's this thing of like, I can't bear to have this conversation with this person, but like, I don't know. That's something I think as time's gone on that I've like been doing the job that I do, that like I've been particularly convicted that where we really see progress in terms of like revealing the truth to people is when we're like actively engaging, like you said, Dan, like actively engaging in the established relationships that we already have, not just in the sense that we're telling people like this is what's true, but also in the sense that we're like listening to their perspective and like actually like engaging in that interaction with them. Like, you know, we see these clips on social media nowadays of like college students on campuses arguing with other students about like whether or not abortion is justified. And like, whether or not that's like a fruitful, way to approach the issue is like another question. But, and you know, this applies to any issue, not just the abortion issue, but like, you know, whether or not that's a justified way or a good way to do that, I think there's a lot of fruit in actually saying like, you know what, I'm going to have these conversations that are hard conversations with people that I actually have a relationship with. And I'm not just going to do this like one-off, like I'm going to try to defeat you. I'm going to decide to engage in the long run and in the long term. And I'm going to actually like invest in you.
That's a great.
And I'm going to listen to your perspective, and I'm going to recognize that like, it's not my goal to defeat you right now. It's my goal to like plant seeds and walk with you on this journey. And it might be 5, 10, 15 years down the road before you see my side.
Or never.
But, you know, maybe we'll be in heaven together one day and the Lord will, you know, and we can share
Not
in that.
maybe, Mary Kate. We're going to be in heaven together. Come on, girl.
I'm saying maybe with regards to the people who don't agree with us about stuff.
Oh, I think that's right. And that's the right way to look at it. And there's a controversial assumption in there too, which is that like we don't love everyone equally. You know, like a lot of times we want to say that, oh, you know, love the homeless guy as much as my fan. We should love everyone the same, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's. I don't know where that idea came from, but I don't think it's right. You know, you love people that you're closest. You have obligations to people that you're closest to, you know, that you have a relationship with already. And so same with conversations with them, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So within the context of, you know, like cancel culture and this idea that like people are guilty because of something they said one time or because of their belief on this particular thing. How do you guys feel we're called as Christians to like live the mercy of God within the context of cancel culture? Like how do we reconcile the two?
The spiritual works of mercy, I think, are a good starting point. One of them is, of course, instruct the ignorant. But the second part, which I think goes along with the accompaniment part, which Mary Kate was talking about, planting seeds, is like to bear wrongs patiently. So instruct the ignorant. But oftentimes, and this happens in Catholic circles too, we feel like our only obligation is to throw the book at someone and say, "This is what it says. You adhere to it," or boom, you're done. And it's like, well, most people don't find that convincing. It's not like that's not even how like some of the saints even like came in. Oftentimes it's a process. At least for me, it was definitely a process, and I had people along the way who kind of like ushered me in and helped to explain things, and it took time. And I mean I think the difference is like fomenting relationship means like investing time in someone and bearing their wrongs patiently, because they're going to do and say stupid things as they're coming in, and even as they're in the church. We continue to fall. I continue to fall.
Right.
And so please bear with me as I fall all over the place, guys. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. That's kind of, yeah, I guess along those lines, Tim, that's kind of what my thought was with this, like tying in the thought of mercy. That's something I think about a lot, is like, do we have mercy? Do we show mercy to the people that are subject to this like cancel culture? So like Chrissy Teigen, for example, she says some things on a pretty consistent basis that I find offensive. Do I have mercy toward her in my heart? And like, do I recognize my own fallenness and sinfulness, my own like potential to say things that are offensive to people? I also think about like politicians, like, are we showing adequate mercy to the politicians who like in the past have done things that we don't appreciate? Like one of my favorite, you think no?
The answer is no.
I think the answer
No,
actually
you keep
is
going.
no. Yeah,
it is no. Yeah,
I agree.
All right, I just said something obvious. Okay.
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know that it is obvious, because I think that a lot of people point to a lot of things that politicians have done in their past, and they say like, well, because this person did this 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever, like they are not, they're not an adequate leader. And I don't think that that's true. One of the like common ones that was like very prevalent when I was working in Iowa, Kim Reynolds is the governor of Iowa, and I worked for her as like her personal aide, and she received 3 DUIs before she was the governor of Iowa. And she has had to talk about that in interviews. And I think it's really remarkable. Like, I always just thought it was really remarkable that people were able to have such mercy with her in that, because I think that that is like a really hard thing for some people to get past. But it's really interesting that we do grant some people that mercy, and then other people who are sinners just like the rest of us, and we don't know where the state of their souls are at. We like, continue to condemn them for sins that they committed 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and continue to bring those things up as supposed proof of their adequacy in their position, which I think is like something that as Catholics we really need to challenge ourselves on.
And what I would say that there is something to benefit from, like presenting that question in terms of, so like in that specific example, the DUIs, it's like, what steps have you made? What have you done? And then, if allowing people to move past it. I think to just say because something was said or done over a certain amount of time ago, just forget about it. But there's a point where you need to move on, of course.
So along those lines, John, like what is considered like an adequate show of repentance, like as the public, like we'll get people who like will say something that is super offensive to like everyone, and everyone can agree that like that shouldn't have been said, and they'll apologize, but they still resign from their position, or they lose their job, or like the consequences are still there for them. So how do we reconcile that like mercy with this like cancel culture idea?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I feel like it's a case by case kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I think that is one thing that is in a big part missing from the whole idea of cancel culture, and that we have in Catholicism, right, is the sacrament of reconciliation. And I think that is something that the secular society could learn a lot from, is the ability to atone for mistakes. But I think it is a case by case thing largely.
We celebrate Augustine and Mary of Egypt. We celebrate these great saints who lived pretty debaucherous lives and completely changed. You're like, I mean, who hasn't been to a student conference or a Sikh conference or some sort of talk where, like, you know, they lay out very clearly how rock bottom they hit, or maybe like they're living a life very contrary to the gospel or very unchristian. And they've changed their ways, and we celebrate that, and we applaud that. And some of those people are priests or sisters or great leaders in the church now. Like that, we applaud that, and then with our other hand, we say, like, you can never change. I know I do this all the time, especially with politicians. Like, you know, they said this once, they can never say anything again. I tried, like, I'm trying to like root that out of myself. With a lot of that. I mean, it's difficult to do. I mean, as far as like what would it take to like for me to like them prove their you know sincerity of their repentance.
So hard to know.
I don't know. I feel it's like, you know, when you actually know when you see it, or you're like, oh yeah, that looks, yeah, they seem like they're, hopefully it's that they are now living a life that is contrary to what they were before, and like. And that is in a fairly holistic way, where it's not like all show or all words. It's actually,
yeah.
You actually see it, and the way they're living their lives is different, and I can see that about you. It truly is different. Or like all the decisions you're making are I see it. You've changed. You
will know them by their fruits.
Sure, exactly. That's well said.
Yeah, I get that. I agree with that. John, did you want to answer that question?
I mean, at some point for sure. I think it's a great question.
I think it's relevant because we kind of were going to talk about like, how does cancel culture sort of like translate itself from social media, like into our real lives?
Yeah. So the question in the chat, Alan Phelps brought up, have you guys ever had a friend group who has very different views than you? And you have always been afraid to share your opinions in fear that they will drop you as a friend? And I just think that's a phenomenal question, and one that's very relevant to a lot of us today. So
yes, for me, the answer is yes. And I think that this is like a very particular thing, you know, like I commented earlier that like, I believe that people who are canceled for saying things that are true or experiencing like a modern day martyrdom, I think that there's like a very real thing there. And I do think that people experience like, is ostracization a word?
Ostracizing?
Like being ostracized I was trying to make it a noun.
Ostrich.
Like people are ostracized for saying what's true and believing what's true. And like, you know, the Bible has told us that like, that is a persecution that we'll experience in our lifetimes as Christians if we're following Christ in the way that we should be following him. Like that is part of the Christian experience. And I mean, I don't know, you guys like tell me what you think. I think that there, like within the context of the cancel culture, there is a call to Catholics and to Christians specifically to approach the cancel culture as like, this is a cross I'm willing to bear, and I am willing to take the risk of being canceled if it means living in the truth of what I believe. Like that is like a very real part of being Christian.
I think you're correct. I think it's hard to get there, and I definitely understand the hesitancy that some might have.
For sure.
And it always has to be approached in the right way. I would say it's pretty easy to kind of almost embrace that quasi martyrdom a little bit too much and say, I'm going to be abrasive and I'm going to I'm going to speak the truth, which is true, but in just the most abrasive way. And then, if I get canceled or if people don't want to be friends with me anymore, it's because I'm speaking the truth and not, you can be right and be a jerk. And I think that's a slippery slope for a lot of this, but I think you're right. I think you're right, is that we do have to be willing to speak the truth in a loving way, even if that might make us ostracized from the community.
I think the friend group example is great for like maybe a mini version of what we're talking about online, in that the approach that, I don't know, at least that I take in a group of friends, is that I'd rather talk to people one-on-one, one at a time, and have the conversation rather than like in a group, so just because, you avoid the sort of people's pride getting wounded and different things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And it does make it more personal. And I do think that's an element at play here, is like the lack of personalization in interactions online, or even like group interactions, like getting into like a political argument in a group and you find that you're the only person in that group who thinks a particular way. It can turn into this, like the group is like shouting you down. And I think that's kind of what one of you were kind of describing. Maybe it was you, John, that like, that's what happens on social media in a lot of instances. And so it's hard to like respond to like each individual comment or like response when there's like a lack of personalization happening there. So how do we like, I guess what's our call in those scenarios? Like I think there would be people, I think we know a lot of people who would just choose to fall silent in those interactions, like those interactions of knowing that they don't agree with the rest of the people in the room, but don't want to speak up for fear of that confrontation. Maybe that's the right way to say that. What's our call in those scenarios? Like to what extent are we called to share the truth, and to what extent is it sometimes more prudent to remain silent?
It just depends on the situation, I think. I don't know if you can really draw. I don't think there's a lot of like specific lines you can draw on that. If you're in a situation where there's something so morally reprehensible is happening that just like someone is in legitimate danger, or just something just heinously wrong is occurring, then you got to step in. But I don't know how you exactly measure the nuts and bolts of those situations. You gotta go through gut, and hopefully you've trained yourself in virtue well enough that you'll be ready for those situations when those happen.
Yeah. I found that that in the majority of situations that I'm in, it's typically better to for me to not speak up. And I hope that's not out of cowardice, but it's out of a way to continue to hear out their argument and draw them in. Because once you're canceled by a group, you're out of that group. As noble as it is, and sometimes it is truly like, yep, this happened, and like, it needed to be done, and it happened, and there was persecution, and I accepted it, and there it is. But I think that's probably less cases than we want it to be, at least in my life. I think that I usually benefit from not speaking up, which is you probably know, it's typically pretty hard for me, because assaults on the truth, no matter how small and insignificant they are, whether it's the score of our pickup basketball game, or
Assaults on the
Kevin's
truth.
always right. Just by
that is so not
that
true.
out of the way.
Or yeah, playing, something like that, or it's something big. It's just like, and if you buy into like, personality types and all like the Myers-Briggs stuff, like, I mean, that is like part of my personality of like, that like assaults on the truth are like, oh man, I can't, like standing by and watching that happen is like, it's hard for me to let it go. But I think it's better to, because rarely are people, or more rarely are people like purposely doing it. Like sometimes it's just out of it's a miscommunication, or like there's usually something behind it, and that listening to them, or just or whatever it goes way farther. And for me, I mean I don't know if I've ever been I've certainly been part of friends. I mean my friend group in college, my main friend group in college. I mean none of them were practicing Catholics. I mean, two of them were, raised, but, no longer believe or practice or whatever. And I would say a lot of their views were pretty different than mine, especially going into college. But I mean, I love them all to death. And
so Kevin, I like a question. In those cases where you have sat back and do you like kind of follow up one-on-one, kind of like what John was saying, or do you
probably not as much as I should. Okay. It's like it's like, oh, I'll see this person again, and you never do, or it's like, usually it's like, I'll never see this person again, and so like, no skin off my back. If I say nothing right now, then like, I'm not going to change their mind. I'm not going to do, they might not like, they might shut me off, but like what's the point of me speaking up? Like, it's not going to change anything. And it's just, it's bad on my part. Like it's lazy to not even engage and assume that like, it's arrogant on my part. Like, oh, so they would never even think about, engaging or talking or changing or anything like that. Or me, also maybe like, I don't even want to change.
Yeah. I think you can speak to a group of people insofar as that they have a common opinion. Like, but it's really hard to know that. Like, isn't that like the first rule of public speaking is to know your audience, right? And then you craft your words that way. And so to like get to know each person on their own and figure out what's in common in the group is, I think, like the challenge in teaching people, or in talking to people is like, you gotta guess in a lot of ways. So it is prudence, like you were saying, like Dan was saying. So,
I think also too, from my own experience in my own conversion/reversion story, I realized there were so many things that I used to believe that were just outright wrong. But the whole process was not the process was not someone saying, hey, let's lay out everything you just said there. Let's lay it out and let's kind of start nitpicking that apart. It came as an introduction to actual truth and presented in such an encouraging and positive way. And I was able to figure out by myself that I was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say by myself, not like, I came up with it myself, but just you hear what someone says and then you're able to just start connecting dots on your own. And that's kind of the secret to evangelization is like, we're not out to just go around the world and just start correcting everybody. We just can't do that. People will realize the things perhaps that might be wrong or maybe a little bit misguided.
Right.
And we're always being evangelized ourselves because we still do that. We still have opinions ourselves that are wrong or misguided until the day we die, And so it's just a way to encourage people. Like, this is a lifelong process, and just continue to just pray for them and introduce them to the truth, and they'll just start figuring it out. It's really cool. It's also very empowering. So sorry.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think what all of you are getting at is like something we've already said, which is like, this is really about relationship.
Yes.
This is not about like shouting people down or like saying the right thing in the right moment. This is about like investing in people and deciding like, I'm going to love this person and listen to them and look them in the face and see them and decide to hear their perspective, even if I don't agree with the words coming out of their mouth. And then then we see it in a different way. I mean, like for me, like I think about like how I approach my siblings or like the people that I've grown up with who are my best friends. Like when I started getting to know these people when I was, you know, in like the second grade, let's say, some of my oldest friends I've known for that long. Like when I started getting to know them, then we weren't thinking about like, is this person right or wrong? We were just, you know, like being together, you know, like playing on the playground or like doing these things to get to know one another. But something about adults, it's like, if you aren't in my camp, you know, my political camp or like my religion or whatever, like I can't engage in a relationship with you because it's threatening to me in some shape or form, which like I think there's something to be like further investigated there of like, what am I feeling so threatened by? But that is really, I think, where like conversion happens, is when people witness the Lord in someone, like in their, through their relationship with someone, they see like this person is living in such a way that like I want more, I want to see more, I want to know more, I want to hear more. And that's how conversion happens.
They see what it looks like.
What does it look like? Yes. How did that happen that you said that before it popped up in the Zoom chat? Your hands were up here when it popped up in the chat.
I do like how you felt the need to do both.
Milagro.
That was a cool trick, Dan. Does Dan have like a clicker now that he sends his messages? Wow. That would be amazing. All right,
I was going to add to that.
Yeah, Tim, go.
So you're talking about like when to remain silent and when to speak up. It might be possible to do like some level of both of them. And it's kind of a practice that I'd heard about of like, you know, whenever you're like in some like deep debate online on some like Bishop Barron video with some atheists. And but so I got some good advice many years ago, and it's like, you know, maybe like wait a day in order to respond. So, you know, so you collect yourself and then you can give like a metered response, something that's respectable. Because oftentimes in the moment, you're fired up, you got the adrenaline going. I'm going to crush Dan Corentian right now. Boom, send.
I am going to crush Dan.
He did.
And he did.
But like, and like tone is hard to tell in text, but sometimes you can tell like, this person doesn't actually care about me. They just want to fire something off. They're PO'd. But you know, you can always tell like the respectful metered responses, and it's like allowing yourself a cool off period. So a temporary moment of silence and then an engagement later on, once you've kind of collected yourself and like, okay, how am I going to approach this, rather than going in guns blazing.
Yep. I cannot agree more to that. I feel like I receive people's words totally differently if I've put it aside and slept on it and then come back to it and read it later when my blood isn't boiling. And like, I've had that experience too of like, I feel like I've had this experience with Marty that I've like received an email or a text and I've been like, this is the worst. This person sucks. And then I've like read it to Marty and he'll be like, it's not a big deal. So I feel like there is something there of like, things feel so personal and we can feel attacked by things that like the person's really not trying to be aggressive. And that's also one of the problems with technology, I think, and with social media is like, you really can't read someone's tone. Like,
no,
dude, have these conversations in person. Don't do it over message. Like that's.
So we should just get rid of social media is what you're saying.
I think so.
No
comment.
No, I do have a comment.
That was a very.
I'm for it.
That was quite the delayed response right there. MK.
I was excited.
Me too.
Tim's on board. All right. So within that context, if you want to talk about social media and whether or not we should rid ourselves of social media or not. So Derek asked a really good question.
I only check MySpace, so it's fine.
Have any of you quit social media? Sorry, John, I'm just not reading your comment, but it's too late because I started talking already. Have any of you quit social media or done a social media fast? And how did you feel? And if you quit and went back on, why did you go back? I mean, I think we could have a whole episode on social media, and maybe we probably will at some point, I'm sure. But like, I think it's a relevant question within the context of like, I think social media, when we are in this rut of like Twitter or like Facebook, like feeling triggered by everything, we can apply those emotions to reading things on social media without that even being the intent of the person who posted it. Does that make sense?
I typically make it, I typically make it a part of my Lenten fast now. No social media. And I don't know what to think about it anymore because there's something nice about being off of it. It's not taking up my time. I can get other reading done, or this past Lent, it was sucked up by Slack getting very active. And so instead of me being on Twitter, I was on Slack. And so did I actually improve? Probably not. But
that was our social interaction during quarantine. So I feel like that was justified.
Oh yeah, no, you can always justify it. It's beautiful. I always justify it. It makes me feel great. But I've always gone back, and I think maybe I just do it to prove that I can. I can live without social media, but me going back says but you don't want to. You want this in your life for whatever reason, because I've never been I'm better. My life is better without this, and I can just get rid of it. And whether it's FOMO or the people that I have been on there, I legit went to a Twitter meetup party last week. That is no joke. Out in the burbs with a bunch of Chicago Twitter people. I'm dead serious. Yeah, and it was an absolute blast. It was a ton of fun. Good, really good people, and it was great. So one of the fruits of my I think the first time I did the social media fast for Lent, part of the fruit was that it was me getting rid of all the accounts that I hate followed, and I kind of retooled it to be I'm just gonna do this Catholic Twitter thing, and that's it. So it has borne some fruits, but definitely is, I think I can live. I know I can live without it, but perhaps I don't want to.
I feel somewhat the same way. 2 years ago, I did my own little week person's version of Exodus 90 for Lent, and I cut out a lot of stuff, and among those things was all secular and social media. And one of the primary things I noticed when I came back to it is that I was so sensitive to every single emotion I felt in consuming media, everything that made me angry, everything that made me feel cringy about there's a really yucky word in this song, or I was so uber sensitive. And I think it's a good, Kev, I think what you're saying is true. Cutting it out on a regular basis is a good practice of keeping ourselves in check. But I also feel that I have and continue to reap the benefits of social media. You guys know, Nicole, so many of my best friends, that I'm close with, I met on social media. Monica, met on Instagram, and Instagram continues to be something that facilitates incredible community in my life. So it's like anything else that I think we can't apply an inherent moral value to social media. It's how we use it. And so we have to be constantly asking questions about our own behavior in terms of how am I receiving these things? And do I have control over how I receive these things? And can I do better, And I think, I guess that's my comment about that.
It's hard to make a general rule, like you're saying, because I think I think you should only spend as much time with, this might be controversial, but with technology,
we love hot takes here.
You have virtue to handle. So in other words, technology is kind of in a certain way power, it gives you options, right? Different ways to do things. And, if you're not able to control yourself to do it in the right way, you're going to be screwed, right? If you give a cocaine addict a bunch of money, good things aren't going to happen, right? So
that's a good example.
I don't know. So I think it's just different from each person's case, from case to case, and so
Dan, do you have any comments about this? I feel like you have strong opinions about social media.
I don't think they're as strong as maybe they sometimes come off as. So like I've never really expressed a lot of interest in like jumping on Twitter or Instagram, though I do jump on Twitter sometimes, just like when I'm trying to like find out like live updates of different things. Usually
when he can't figure out what
events.
cancel culture is, he uses Twitter.
Exactly, and I still haven't, So yeah, I don't know. So I used to be it's like back when Facebook actually was like like the thing. I was I don't know. I was very vocal a lot of times, and like I was just like kind of like fairly active, and I just got to a point where I just couldn't handle going through the news feed and just seeing so much stuff that I disagreed with. And it's not like I hated the people who were saying them, but I just couldn't. There's just this natural human inclination to want to respond to something that you see is wrong or that you hear is wrong, and it was just the internet is so unlike our normal human experience, where it's just like you hear something and like one thing, and I have to process it, and I can talk about it with somebody, maybe talk about it with the actual person who said it. But with like a news feed, or Twitter, you're just scrolling through. It's just one after another. It's like we don't know how to process that kind of stuff. Like we're not meant to, right? Like as we've said earlier, we can't address every wrong thing we hear on the internet. And so I just feel like it's not a very authentic experience of when you actually meet a person, because behind everyone's words are experiences, perhaps even wounds. And just like things that cause them to say that. But there's no way we can ever get into any of that. We can never know the pain with which people might say certain things, or the anxiety people say certain things, the anger, frustration, whatever it is, whatever emotion. And so we're trying to figure out how to address people, but we don't have nearly enough tools to do so. And so I just think social media is not it's just, if I'm trying to have a good, like authentic conversation with someone, I don't have it over social media, and it's so hard to try to do it not that way. And so I just avoid it. It's very unrealistic, if that's not too strong a word to use.
I can relate to that. I think, you guys know a big part of my job is social media related, and I think that an experience I have had, I guess twofold, and maybe like to point to like Bishop Barron choosing to be present on YouTube. I don't know that he has ever said it in quite this way, but the way I've always received it is such that he feels a call to be a voice of truth in this like mess of atheism and heresy and all these lies that we see on the internet. And I have found in my own experience that like not even necessarily engaging on social media, but just like observing other people on the internet is a very humbling reminder to me of how broken how broken people are just in general. Like the wide array of crazy and insane things we see on the internet are offensive and horrifying and sad, and like some of the worst brokenness of humanity plays out on the internet nowadays, I think. But I also believe I'm not necessarily addressing what you just said, Dan, because I also think that like we all have a particular response that the Lord places on our hearts with regards to some of those things. But I just think that there is also some good in like choosing to say like, I don't have to respond to every single thing I see. I don't have to like actively address every single thing that I see, but I can choose to like use this tool in a way that like I can be a voice as well. Like a voice of truth. And I think that is something that some of us are called to do. Obviously like within the context of like having that relationship with God and that ongoing dialogue, and that's like, self-check of like, am I doing this honestly? And am I like doing this? Am I being truthful? Like, am I being a voice of truth, or am I just like engaging my own ego at this point, which I think is like a very real thing on social media, that we just like engage our own ego, just indulge ourselves. I don't know, that's my thought, but yeah, I hear you. So guys,
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
So if you could cancel one member of this group, who would it be?
Can you cancel yourself?
Well,
And
you're about to.
Someone cancel themselves. I actually.
Jim just canceled himself. He just shut
I
his
am.
camera off.
This is
Wow.
my
microphone's
Totally
literally
unre-
turned all the way around. You didn't do that
I'm
on
still here.
purpose?
No, my battery.
Oh my gosh, I thought that was completely intentional. I thought you intentionally turned that off. Sparkosoft.
Sparkosoft canceled Tim.
That's right.
Sparkosoft canceled Tim.
I'm
Are there any-
sort of canceling myself. This is probably gonna be my last episode for quite a long time.
That's so sad.
So
I'm so sad you guys are going back to Mundelein. Like, I'm happy for you, but I'm so sad. I feel like John got a job. The seminarians are going back to seminary.
John.
Like
Selfish.
our quarantine bliss of like just hanging out and being friends all the time is coming to a very sad and bitter.
It
are
was
we
a
no
pretty
longer
long
friends?
summer.
Yeah. We're not even friends anymore. I'm very sad.
Yeah.
Are there any good questions in the chat?
I think we answered the ones that were asked.
Did we? I feel like there was one maybe. Oh no, that's just Dan talking about ostracized. Okay. All right.
Ignore it.
Kevin O'Malley comment of the week. Is that really? It's 9:30. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
and we
think
could
the Kevin O'Malley comment of the week should go to the second person to make the cancel TCI.
which was
I don't know who that was, but it wasn't very funny the first or the third time, but second person, spot on.
Wait, why? What?
It was only funny.
I'm just joking. That it's a very obvious joke that was made by a lot of people. So, no, I'm making
Who
a joke
said
about
it
the jokes.
Why are you not? Okay, will you use the
So
person's name? Who said it the
Sam-
second time?
Sam
I don't
said
know
it
who
first.
did.
Sam said it first.
It doesn't matter who said it the second time. It's a dumb joke. That I made.
No, we're gonna
What?
buy into this.
Why are you being weird? Who
did.
said it the second time?
I have no idea.
How do you not know? Like,
Why
don't
would
they?
I
Have
know?
a, don't they have a?
You know who it
streaming?
was? It was Marty.
Marty
Yeah,
said it.
Marty said it at some point.
Marty said,
Marty-
"I'm canceling this podcast."
Yeah, he's the second one to do it, and then the Robert Black Ben Rahimi crew duo did it the third time. So
Yeah, it's just good job, guys. Well done.
Our best friends.
All right. Cool. Well,
well, do we
Right.
have? Do we actually have a winner?
The chat was kind of.
Wow, you didn't say that.
I don't know.
Uh,
I mean, Zach tried.
Well,
Well, we can't give it to Zach because apparently you can't give it to people from the podcast.
That is true.
okay. I personally felt that was wrong when it happened, and I feel
No, we
it's
can't.
wrong
Oh,
now.
we can't go back now. We cannot go back now.
I think it's a good rule.
I think it's a
Why
good
is
rule
it
too.
a good rule?
I don't know. We can't win it. We can't.
So we decided we were with Kevin O'Malley on Sunday after Mass, and we decided that we're going to start scheduling our podcast only on nights that Kevin O'Malley is available, so that he can be back in the chat. Yeah. So, all right. Wait. So who wins?
Big yikes.
Who wins? Is there any other like housekeeping items that I feel people should know? We always like talk about things after the fact. Follow us on social media. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, what are you even doing? Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
What are you even doing?
All right. Anything else? Are we done? It's 9:34. That's
I mean,
literally so insane.
This
can
is
try-
it.
We can drum up more
This is-
content. We can. It can always be done.
Drum up more
there's a lot
content.
of commentary on because Mayor Lori Lightfoot last week just tore down the statue of Christopher Columbus in Grant
Yep.
Park.
Yep.
So I mean, you could talk about the statues and all
Who's
that.
that?
That's a form of cancel culture, and even like a revisionist kind of thing as well. That might even be its own episode.
Tim, do you have any immediate thoughts about that? Like
Um,
the Lori Lightfoot getting rid of the Christopher Columbus statue is like a very particular thing because the protesters tried to take down themselves, and that was
Yeah.
creating like almost like a violent situation. I've heard some defense that like she actually did the right thing. I'm curious what your take on that is.
Not about that in general, but just about like kind of because like in California they tore down the statues of Junipero Serra, and a certain
Mhm.
person in the comments section who shall not be named has a great quote that like if you can judge people by their worst actions, if you can judge them at their worst, you can also judge them at their best. And cancel culture and the tearing of the statues tends towards the worst. You know, this person did this. That's the only thing that matters, and it doesn't appeal to me. So we're gonna tear them down. We're gonna revise history somewhat. And just a gut reaction towards like the Grant Park thing. I'm not super like utilitarian. Like I take a more principles based approach to things, and just because like a crowd deems it, it's like it doesn't really appeal to me as like a right or wrong thing to do. So
Bishop Barron has a great response in terms of the canceling of like Junipero Serra that's going on in California right now, because he lays out just like basically what this has turned into. We're just like defaming someone because of what they represent and not who they actually were. And so it's a great short little video, and I think he did a great job about it. Bishop Barron doesn't get fired up very often, but I think he kind of tended more towards that a little bit. When it wasn't like his like finest moment, but it was he did a great job.
I was just gonna say I got to give Bishop Barron some credit, because recently, like, you want to talk about somebody, I mean, he's been putting his money where his mouth is recently with some of this stuff. Like, for somebody to speak so fervently about the need to like engage with the other side and listen to people, like, he is under fire more than anybody else from like the Taylor Marshalls of the world, including Taylor Marshall. And recently,
Don't do it.
And recently, it's very clear to me that not only is he listening, he's like allowing some of those criticisms to convict him. And he is like one of the only bishops who I think is like really standing up and leading right now in the midst of all this stuff. I like really appreciate the way that he's been handling a lot of this stuff. I think he has like really done an incredible job to like, first of all, listen to the criticisms of the laity and like people who have not been a fan of some of the way that he and other bishops in general have handled things. Like, not only is he listening, he's also like allowing those criticisms to convict him, not in a way that's like pandering, in a way that's like authentic, which I just, gosh, like that takes humility, which is really hard and really painful. And I just appreciate that so much. Thanks for saying that. Any other thoughts about any of those things? Kevin thinks we should cancel Taylor Marshall.
Oh, absolutely. There's one we get rid of him. We wouldn't miss him for a second.
No.
Kev,
I love you. Agree to disagree.
bring back the Inquisition. Taylor Marshall gone. Michael Voorhees gone. Done.
St. Louis Cardinals gone.
Causing way more damage to the church and thus society than they are helping.
Some would disagree with you on that.
I understand, and those people are wrong, and I'm canceling those people too.
Well, I guess I won't be back, guys, because Kevin just canceled me.
This is a great time to just close out the episode.
By the way, we have our comment of the week. Derek just said, I just smashed the subscribe button so hard I broke my screen.
Derek! Yes!
All right, Derek. That's your winner. That's absolutely the winner. No question.
I agree. That is the winner. Also, Derek, I'm a little offended that you've literally watched all 15 of our episodes and have never subscribed to the channel until now.
Send us a photo of your smashed screen and we'll.
Derek is our most loyal viewer. He's one of the only that have followed from the beginning, and he literally didn't subscribe till I asked him to in this moment.
We should do a listener episode where everyone who wants to can come on and tell me why they think that Taylor Marshall shouldn't be canceled.
Kevin,
it's like
you weren't even present for the last hour and 40 minutes.
We should,
I'll tell you, the Inquisition was a real thing, and we are the Chicago Inquisition, and we should be able to ban things, I think.
Yeah.
We just dug our namesake into even a deeper hole right now.
I gotta be honest. I fear that one day we will all be canceled for the name of this podcast.
Good. Then we will know we have done something right. Write it on my gravestone.
Well,
I was canceled.
Tune in, folks, because one day we're gonna defend the name of our podcast. Which,
by the way, so some podcasts for their fans, sometimes they give out free stuff. So like they give out T-shirts, they give out little bobbleheads. Like this is all really great stuff. But I think the giveaway we should be giving is if we really like you, then Kevin will block you on Twitter. We'll just do that. It's free.
Every block is good. It is good to be blocked. It is good to block. as Father Anthony Sciarappa would say.
If Kevin blocks you on Twitter, consider yourself in the same ranks as Taylor Marshall.
Oh,
Not wrong.
geez.
Kevin, have you blocked Taylor Marshall on Twitter?
Most definitely.
Has Taylor Marshall ever tried to troll you on Twitter that you needed to block him?
No, he says stupid stuff that divides the church. And I don't need that crap in my life. I feel very strongly about this, and I'm
couldn't tell.
not joking about the fact that whoever his bishop is needs to get him under
Trying
control.
to say it how he sees it.
Oh yeah,
Amen, John.
That's how it goes. He's just asking the questions. He's just searching for the truth. Apparently, that's all you need these days.
Hashtag Canon 212.
You brought up that name, and now you set me off on this ridiculous thing.
Did I bring this up? I actually probably did bring this up. Anyway.
Who knows?
Anyway, the moral of the story is look how great this podcast is that we can have such a mix of opinions and we all hang out.
And we talked it and I learned nothing. I learned absolutely nothing, which is a successful podcast for me.
Great.
All right. Yeah.
Once again.
But did Dan finally?
Do you hear
learn
that,
about-
Dan?
Did Dan?
Yeah,
Dan,
Mary Kate, that's why I just said something. I'm so, to all of our wonderful listeners out there, if you haven't learned anything from this podcast, apparently we're doing what we set out to do. So thank you
not
for
in general. I
subscribing.
said me.
Thank you for breaking your screens.
Listen,
to
I don't
subscribe
want to learn from this podcast. Everyone else can learn as much as they want from this podcast.
Kevin's going to remain the same when this is all over.
Exactly.
Great.
All
Cool.
righty.
On that note, does anyone want to close this in prayer? No? Cool. I'll close this in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity as we have the last few weeks to come together and talk about you and talk about how we can discern you well and how we can continue to seek you out in our daily lives. We ask you to give us the conviction in our hearts and the patience and the love and the charity for others to pursue truth in all things and to listen to the perspectives of other people honestly and with open hearts and with charity for the other and love for the other. We ask that you give us wisdom so as to discern right from wrong and fact from fiction. And we ask that you give us the courage to continue to pursue this truth and also to speak it in the moments that we're called to speak it. And give us the courage to fall silent in the moments that you call us to be silent. And we ask for the intercession of Our Lady. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So I have a story. So
Oh.
okay, so when you, Mary Kate, when you asked, hey, does anyone want to pray? I ran to Google and I typed in prayer for those on the margins, or something like that. And I'm like, okay, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna read the first thing that comes to mind, or the first thing that shows up on the page. And the first thing that shows up on the page is the lyrics to the song "The Summons," will you come and follow me? So
I love that song, actually.
I was really hoping I would get to pray and I would just start singing and then see how long you guys would stay serious.
Don't sing. You just speak the lyrics like what's his face? Ben Stiller and Meet the Parents. Day by day, by day by day. Follow thee more nearly.
Will you kiss the leopard clean and do such as this unseen? I can't even say with a straight face.
What's funny though is I probably wouldn't have caught it if that's what you did.
Even though you love that song?
I do love that song, but I don't know that I would have caught it.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, see everybody next week.
Okay. You won't see
damn.
me next week, but nice knowing you guys.
Enjoy.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, TCI.